It's June 24th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. Starting with suspected arms transfers between North Korea and Russia. North Korea shipped about 1.6 million artillery shells to Russia, which have been used in the war against Ukraine, according to newly released data. And these shipments were apparently labeled ammunition. The U.S. nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, the USS Theodore Roosevelt, docked in South Korea's port city of Busan over the weekend. The vessel will join the new trilateral drill called Freedom Edge between South Korea, U.S. and Japan. At least 1,300 people, mostly unauthorized pilgrims, died to an extreme heat wave during this year's Hajj, Saudi Arabia has confirmed. The death toll is 6 times higher than the figure recorded last year. New trade data shows North Korea has recently transported containers to Russia, likely carrying more than 1 million artillery shells for Russia to use in its war against Ukraine. Our Pansy leads us this morning.
From August to January, more than 74,000 metric tons of material labeled as explosives were distributed from 2 ports in Russia's Far East to 16 sites mainly along the country's western borders near Ukraine, an amount equal to about 1.6 million artillery shells. Citing a new analysis of trade data obtained by C4ADS, a nonprofit organization based in Washington, D.C., the Washington Post reported that although the data does not include the origin of the shipments, there is evidence of Russian ship movements between North Korea and Russia during the same period. According to the C4ADS, although documents refer to the cargo as explosives, paperwork at the arrival site indicates that they were, in fact, munitions. Similar patterns were also detected by the Royal United Services Institute, a British think tank that uses satellite imagery to monitor movements between North Korea and Russia. It found 27 shipments between the North Korean port of Dajin and the 2 Russian ports in roughly the same period, estimating that thousands of containers had been moved. Addressing concerns on military cooperation between Pyongyang and Moscow, South Korea's National Security Advisor Chang Ho-jin said Russia's provision of precision weapons to North Korea would leave no line for Seoul's aid to Ukraine. He emphasized that South Korea's decision on whether to provide weapons to Ukraine depends on Russia, apparently hinting that Seoul would consider delivering lethal weapons to Kyiv if Russia crosses the line. Meanwhile, Russia accused Ukraine of drone and missile attacks in a city in Russian-occupied Crimea. Russian authorities claimed Sunday that at least 3 people were killed, including 2 children, and over 100 were wounded. It said the deadly attack launched by Ukraine involved 5 U.S.-made long-range ATACMS missiles. This comes after the Biden administration in May gave Ukraine permission to use American weapons to strike targets inside Russia. Arirang News.
The North Korea-Russia partnership has become tighter following the summit of their 2 leaders last week. But that's also the case for the partnership between South Korea, the U.S., and Japan, with their first trilateral multi-domain drill taking place this week. We are joined by Professor Brian Myers for more. Good morning.
Good morning.
Professor Myers, let's talk about the nuclear-powered U.S. aircraft carrier, USS Theodore Roosevelt, and the trilateral exercise.
Well, the main advantage of nuclear-powered aircraft carriers like this one is that they don't need refueling stops, so they can stay on the job for a long time. They've got a really big operational range, and they can deploy at short notice to pretty much anywhere in the world. Now, the Roosevelt has been in service since the mid-1980s, so it's been in a lot of action on behalf of the U.S. military in the Middle East and elsewhere, and it carries dozens of aircraft and helicopters, as well as thousands of sailors and aircrew. And of course, it's coming to Busan, or it's here in Busan now, at a very tense time in the region. So this is making headlines around the world.
Definitely. Let's talk about the significance of this drill. I mean, should we see this exercise as a response to the summit between the leaders of North Korea and Russia, Putin and Kim Jong-un?
Well, that's a good question, because the trilateral military exercise in itself was agreed upon earlier this month, even before that summit between Putin and Kim, which nobody really expected would result in the kind of treaty that it resulted in. But it's a significant drill anyway, because it's a trilateral exercise involving Japan, South Korea, and the United States. And it shows that even though a formal trilateral alliance doesn't exist, the three countries are kind of behaving as it does. The whole point of Freedom Edge is to strengthen intercommunication, interoperability, as they call it, between the countries. So, as I say, this was planned before the summit in Pyongyang, but the Russians and the North Koreans are saying it's exactly this kind of military exercise that has impelled them to sign that treaty. So, of course, our side takes a very different view, saying that North Korea's nuclear program makes drills like this necessary. But I think there's truth probably to both perspectives.
Right, what a coincidence, but I'm sure North Korea and Russia want to use the drill as an excuse to, tighten their partnership. Now, how big of a threat or a challenge will the three-way drill be to the North? I mean, will North Korea react to the drill in any way?
Well, exercises are always a big deal to adversarial countries because they can never be completely sure of the exercising country's intent. So they might well suddenly result in actual attacks. And from North Korea's perspective, our side's exercises pose a special challenge because they force the North Korean military to engage in counter exercises, which requires a lot of energy and oil that is in very short supply in North Korea. There's a propaganda challenge here, too, in as much as Kim Jong-un, as the leader of a military first state, is going to feel pressure to show his people and the outside world that he's not intimidated. So I would expect some reaction to the drill, or at least some sort of military or ballistic activity that can plausibly serve the function of a stern warning to the United States. And it's all very worrying, really, how this tension has been increasing just over the past few weeks. And I guess we can only hope that things don't go too far.
Right. And my colleague Unji just reported Seoul is now considering providing lethal support to Ukraine as an option to pressure Russia. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, there's still a lot of uncertainty as to just what that agreement between Putin and Kim Jong-un actually entails. It took, I think, all of us by surprise, myself included. And we're all a little bit uncertain now as to how much we can read into this treaty because it entails a mutual commitment to provide military assistance if either country is attacked. But what exactly does military assistance mean, and exactly what kind of military attack would result in that assistance? So the big question here in South Korea is how to respond, because nobody wants to overreact and make matters worse. Let's remember there's not a whole lot of solidarity with Ukraine here. And there's a lot of reluctance to forego the good trade relationship that Russia and South Korea have enjoyed for quite some time now. So I think the South Koreans want to wait a bit and see how that summit treaty really changes the nature of military cooperation between Moscow and Pyongyang.
Definitely, it's not going to be an easy choice for Seoul either.
Nope.
Now, in the meantime, the North is expected to hold a plenary meeting of the ruling Workers' Party of Korea this week to review their policy performance in the first half as they have done so in the past. Now, will they be discussing its upgraded partnership with Moscow?
No doubt they will, but not discussing it in any substantial sense. I always warn against taking North Korean party meetings and conferences too seriously because although the regime tries to project the image of a party state operating according to formal procedures like this, it's very much a one-man dictatorship. And these events serve little purpose except to acclaim the leader. So the question is whether Kim Jong-un himself uses this meeting as an opportunity to maybe give a speech that offers a bit more insight into just what that military treaty entails. That's what we're looking for.
Lots of things being unfolded this week here on the Korean Peninsula. Thank you, Professor Myers, for your insight. As always, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Saudi Arabia says over 1,300 people died during the 6-day Hajj pilgrimage, which came to an end last week. Now, the deaths were mostly heat-related, while over 80% of those who lost their lives were unauthorized to be there. Lee Seung-jae reports.
The Hajj is an annual Islamic pilgrimage to Mecca, the holiest city for Muslims located in Saudi Arabia. The pilgrimage is a mandatory religious duty that must be carried out by all adult Muslims at least once in their lifetime, who are physically and financially capable of making the trip. However, this year's Hajj, which ran from June 14th to 19th, turned deadly as Saudi Arabia says over 1,300 people died during the 6-day pilgrimage period this year. Releasing the official figures for the first time, the government said Sunday that 1,301 pilgrims died, mostly due to heat stress. Temperatures above 51 degrees Celsius were recorded during this period, with many people walking long distances under direct sunlight without adequate shelter or comfort. Of the dead, 83% were not authorized to make the pilgrimage. Saudi Arabia requires licenses to legally access Mecca, with 1.8 million issued each year. As licenses can cost several thousand US, many make unauthorized pilgrimages. Those without proper documents don't travel in organized tour buses with air conditioning or easy access to water and food supplies. The permits are allocated to countries on a quota system and are distributed through a lottery. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
South Korea's LG Electronics has been recognized by US-based independent product testing platform Consumer Reports with multiple awards for its TVs. According to industry sources on Monday, 4 of the 8 best TVs of the year awards were given for LG OLED TVs. The leading American consumer media outlet evaluated the best TVs of the year based on high contrast, security and privacy, sound, color accuracy, and contrast ratio. Among the top TVs, the LG OLED EVO garnered 87 points. That's the highest score given for any TV evaluated, calling it one of the best TVs you can currently buy. As the geopolitics impacts trade across the world, South Korea and Germany can help overcome their trade dependencies by collaborating through innovation. Now, that's the message a Seoul-based German official gave amid a higher-level visit from Berlin last week. Our Oh Soo-young has more.
South Korea and Germany can de-risk from global crises through stronger value-based partnerships and innovation. That's according to Dr. Martin Henkelmann, president of the Korean-German Chamber of Commerce and Industry. At a time when trade protectionism, war and geopolitical conflicts challenge the rules-based global order, he said middle powers like Korea and Germany need to strengthen their solidarity to keep markets free and open. This came as German Vice-Chancellor Robert Habeck visited Seoul last week, before heading to China, where he called out Beijing for its unfair subsidies and support for Russia amid its invasion of Ukraine. Following China, South Korea is Germany's second-largest Asian market, with bilateral trade standing at $33.9 billion last year, according to Korea Customs Service. Henkelmann says de-risking from China presents untapped potential for growth between the two export-dependent economies.
Besides the aspect that both countries are highly industrialized, have a strong GDP that comes from industry, from manufacturing, we are value partners, as we always say. And I think it has been very good sign that Korea has been supporting many of the sanctions in this sanction against Russia. I think de-risking means that we look for opportunities to diversify our sourcing, what we spoke about, that we look on opportunities to have different options for the production.
With overlapping interests in fields like supply chain security, semiconductors, automobiles, and renewable energy, the two energy-intensive economies can collaborate on decarbonisation and innovation across all sectors.
I think offshore wind would be a good possibility here. German turbines and German knowledge, how we could establish wind parks, combining this with the skills and the knowledge here in the country when it comes to the steelwork, etc., could be a good fit then to go forward for renewable energy. And in other fields, we see that when it comes to quantum physics and when we look on AI, these are all challenges we have together. Our industry has to see how they integrate AI into modern processes of manufacturing and what are the next steps here.
To spur cooperation, Henkelmann says German firms in Korea hope to see more clarity and stability in defining legal terms, especially labour laws, as well as better access to public procurement and certifications for green businesses. He further called for an update to the South Korea-European Union FTA, as Korea and Germany compete and collaborate towards a complementary partnership that reinforces global value chains. 오수영, Arirang News.
Local governments here in the country are rolling up their sleeves to encourage young people to find love and get married. They're stepping up to provide affordable wedding halls and even playing matchmaker. Kim Bo-kyung has this report. A demographic national emergency. Those are the words President Yoon Suk-yeol used recently to describe South Korea's low birth rate crisis. Despite the government's astronomical budget to tackle the low birth rate, the total fertility rate, the average number of expected births from a woman in her lifetime, dropped to an all-time low of 0.72 in 2023. Along with the central government's efforts to encourage people to start families, local governments too are making all-out efforts, coming up with their own ways of addressing the birth rate in their regions. One of them is Hungnam City, whose own mayor has become a matchmaker. Dubbed Solomon's Choice, a mass blind date program is being hosted by the city's government to help young people meet each other in a more natural way.
Even if young people are even considering marrying, they are too busy working and cannot actively seek chances to go out to find love. The local government's way of selecting people to join the program is fair and trustworthy, so a lot of participants seem to have trust in us.
The matchmaking program that started last year has already helped to make more than 100 couples, with one of the couples set to get married. That couple was introduced through the program in November last year and will become newlyweds in July. The groom-to-be had no hesitations about recommending the program to others.
On a one-on-one blind date, there is pressure on the guy to lead the conversation. But here, all participants arrive with the intention of actively seeking a match, so they all actively speak. Also, even if you are not into one, you can talk to another person right away, so there are more chances.
Though forming such an atmosphere for people to find love and marry might seem like a limited measure to beat the demographic crisis, an expert says it is necessary.
Against population crisis, local governments have been desperate in hosting additional and new population recently. And there are several ways to do that. First, hosting new public organizations. Second, hosting private companies. And third, promoting marriage. One common reason for not getting married will be not finding a suitable partner.
Once you find your destiny, you need to marry, which is, again, not simple. According to Statistics Korea, people in their 20s and 30s said not having enough money was the top reason for not marrying. Most of the pressure comes from buying a house, but the money needed for a wedding is also a burden. Private matchmaking company Kayeon says the average cost for a wedding preparation, excluding a house, is around $45,000. What's worse is that businesses associated with weddings, including wedding halls and dress and makeup shops, do not have set prices, nor do they clearly disclose costs, making it even harder for uninformed couples. Seoul City's solution was opening public facilities for couples to use for weddings to lessen their burden. This beautiful hanok is actually a complex cultural space promoting Oriental medicine. But it was transformed into a wedding hall for the day so a couple could have a cost-effective wedding. Mr. Park and his bride chose this venue through the city's public wedding hall program, which is opening up a total of 28 venues for weddings. The program began during the pandemic as wedding halls closed their doors and wedding hall rental prices surged. The biggest advantage of renting public facilities is that they are cheap comparatively, and prices are transparent.
Many people choose usual wedding halls. We wanted to have a memorable, meaningful event for guests, so we chose this venue through the program. We were able to check the price transparently because they showed us the estimate and contract in detail.
Seoul City aims to expand the program, making it much cheaper for couples.
Couples prefer outdoor weddings, especially in a hanok, followed by parks and museums. We're going to have more of these venues so that more couples can easily make a reservation. In terms of the cost, the rental fee goes up to $860, but we have revised the related ordinance to make it free, starting later this year.
Such measures are seemingly better than nothing at all. However, an expert added that what was of the utmost importance was to tackle core issues.
The most important necessities for young people who want to marry is to have a house, jobs, and the money needed to raise children. Local governments need to come up with detailed benefits such as houses specially allocated for newlyweds, so that they can plan their life, marry, and have a child.
김보경, 아리랑 뉴스.
Good morning, I'm Kim Xiang, and now we turn off to stories from around the world. We begin today in Russia's North Caucasus Republic of Dagestan, where attacks by gunmen on 2 churches, a synagogue and police officers left at least 13 dead and another 25 injured. The attacks were reportedly simultaneously on Sunday in the cities of Derbent and Makhachkala, where the synagogue and churches were also reportedly set ablaze. According to the Dagestan Public Monitoring Commission, 7 law enforcement officers, a priest and a church security guard were killed, while Russian news agency TASS reported that 4 armed militants have also been killed. The head of the Dagestan Republic said that identities of the attackers are being established while urging the public to remain calm. Dagestan, one of the more impoverished parts of Russia, is predominantly Muslim, has previously suffered attacks by a jihadist organization called the Islamic Emirate of the Caucasus. Now moving over to Greece, where 13 crew members of a luxury yacht have been charged with arson after fireworks from the yacht allegedly sparked a forest fire on the Greek island of Hydra. According to Greek media, they were charged on Sunday with causing the fire on Friday night. According to the country's Minister of Climate Crisis and Civil Protection, the fire burned some 3,000 acres of Hydra Island's pine forest. 6 airplanes and 2 teams of firefighters were required to extinguish the blaze. The 53-meter super yacht reportedly costs around $320,000 a week to hire. Protesters in Brazil marched in Rio de Janeiro on Sunday to demonstrate against stricter laws criminalizing abortion in Brazil. The bill, proposed by conservative lawmakers, would make it illegal to terminate a pregnancy after 22 weeks, labeling the action homicide punishable by up to 20 years in prison. Demonstrators included carnival groups and women dressed in white bonnets and red cloaks representing characters from The Handmaid's Tale, Margaret Atwood's dystopian novel set in a patriarchal theocracy. The bill needs to be passed by Brazil's lower house, although no date has been set yet. Currently, abortion in Brazil is only legal in cases of rape or if there is a clear risk to the mother's life, with the punishment of up to 3 years in prison for illegal abortions. Now to the UK, where after a day of chaos caused by a power cut, Manchester Airport has resumed its flight operations. According to the airport spokesperson, up to 90,000 passengers were affected on Sunday, as a significant number of flights, in particular from Terminals 1 and 2, were delayed or cancelled. Aviation analytics company Cirium stated that by Sunday lunchtime, 66 outbound and 50 inbound flights had been cancelled. Manchester Airport's managing director, Chris Woodroof, apologised, saying that a fault with a cable had caused a power surge that took down security systems and baggage screening.
Good morning. After some heavy downpours last night in central regions, the week is starting off on a cloudy note. But today we have rain in the forecast for southern parts of the country, dropping 10 to 20 millimeters an hour of heavy rain in the late afternoon, along with thunder and lightning. Meanwhile, yellow dust, which is usually seen during spring, will blow into the western parts of the country today. So those in southwestern regions, including Gwangju, need to brace for yellow dust rain. But the heat wave takes a break in the capital area under sunnier skies with a high of 28 degrees Celsius here in the capital. Southern provinces will be similar to slightly higher than yesterday, topping out at 31 degrees over in Daegu. Well, temperatures don't look too bad, but muggy air will make you feel uncomfortable. Then it will get hotter again as we get into the latter half of the week, while monsoon rain returns to the southern parts of the country on Wednesday. With that in mind, let's take a look at the international weather conditions.
We thank you for watching New Day at Arirang. Have a wonderful start to the week.